Elementary Algebra, Assessment 4 Review, questions 23 through 25. On question number 23, the instructions read, use the formulas relating distance, rate, and time. So I have a problem 23 and it reads, a family began a trip 375 miles at 8 a.m. They arrived at their final destination at 3:30 p.m. If they took 3 20-minute breaks and took a half hour for lunch, what was their average rate? Round to the nearest tenth if necessary. Well, whenever we have a word problem like this, we want to come through and we want to make a note of all of the things that we have available. Well, we know the distance that they traveled, so I've recorded it here. Their distance was 375 miles. The next thing we want to look at is how long were they traveling for? Well, they traveled from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. So that's a total of 7 hours and 30 minutes, or 7.5 hours. Now let's look at their breaks. According to this, they took 3 20-minute breaks. So 3 times 20 to equal 60 minutes, which is equal to 1 hour. They also took a 30-minute break, or a half-hour lunch break. So that's 30 minutes, or 0.5 hours. Now, we're trying to figure out, according to this, we're trying to figure out what their rate was, right? What their average rate was. Well, rate is calculated as a distance divided by a time. Well, we already know the distance is 375. What we need is the time. We have that they were out there for 7.5 hours, but they weren't driving for that full 7.5 hours. Part of it, they were off the road. They had 1 hour worth of breaks and a half an hour for lunch. So we need to subtract that 1.5 from the 7.5 before we have the time. So here we have it set up, the 375 miles over that 7.5 miles that they were on the road, minus the 1 hour for their breaks, minus the 30 minutes for their lunch break. This gives us 6 hours. Now we can complete the problem. 375 miles divided by 6 hours leaves us with 62.5 miles per hour. On question number 24, it says solve the problem. So question number 24 reads, how much will it cost to carpet a 16-foot by 21-foot room if carpeting costs $18 per square yard? Round the answer to the nearest cent. So whenever you can, if it's possible to draw a picture, draw a picture. So we know that we have a room that's rectangular. So I drew a rectangle here and I put the units on it. It's 16 feet by 21 feet. Now, a rectangle, we know that the area of a rectangle is going to be the length times the width. So we can calculate the area of the room. The area of the room is going to be 16 times 21, which gives us 336 feet squared, because the original units were in feet. Feet times feet, so feet squared. Well, we want to calculate the price now. However, we're running into a little bit of a snag. The price is given to us per square yard. So we're going to have to do some conversions of units here. We know that 3 feet is equal to 1 yard if we're just measuring a length. But this time we're measuring an area. So that means squared. So I take the 3 feet and I'm going to square it on the formula. So the 3 feet squared, but on the other side I'm also going to square the yards. So when I square them, I end up with a 3 times 3 for 9 feet squared equals a 1 times a 1 for 1 yard squared. So 9 feet squared is equal to 1 yard squared. So knowing this, I can convert my 336 feet squared into yards by dividing by 9 feet. 9 feet squared equals 1 yard. So I'm going to set it up. I divide it in. I find that I have 37 1/3 yards squared. So I'm going to take that 37 1/3 and multiply it by an 18 and I find that I have approximately $672. This is going to be the cost of carpeting that room. On question number 25, it reads, Midtown Antiques collects 6% sales tax on all sales. If total sales, including the tax, are $1,840.41, find the portion that is the tax. Round to the nearest cent. What we're going to have to do is set up two problems and use one to solve the other. Well, the first thing I want to do, however, is give each of the two items I'm trying to solve for a variable. So I'm going to give the goods the letter G, and I'm going to use a T to represent tax. Well, according to the instruction, or what we read up here, the goods plus the tax equaled $1,840.41. So goods plus tax equaled $1,840.41. So there's one formula. The next one comes from knowledge that we already possess. We know that when we make a purchase of something, that they take the sum of all the goods and they multiply it by the sales tax in a decimal form. So I'm going to take that 6% sales tax and I'm going to put it into a decimal form, which is 0.06, and multiply it to the G, which is going to represent our goods. So now I have a formula for T. I can take that value for T and plug it into the T on my first formula. So I'm going to end up with G plus 0.06 G equals 1,840.41. Now I can combine like terms. I'm going to combine these two G's. Even though I don't see it, there's always a 1 in front of my variable. So I have a 1 up here. So this is 1 plus 0.06. So I get a 1.06 G equals $1,840.41. Now I'm going to divide out that 1.06 so that the G is left on its own. Whatever I do to one side, do to the other. So I find that G is equal to $1,736.24. Now, if I want the tax, I need to come back to that second formula I had. Tax was equal to 0.06 times the goods. Well, I know what the goods cost, so I plug them in there. I multiply it, and I come out to find that my tax is equal to $104.17. So for my final answer, I'm going to use the dollar sign in here because it's money, $104.17.